Hey guys, right now I'm talking to the most interesting man on the internet. Now this man is so interesting because people don't even know who he is or what he does or how he runs it. Now what I mean is everybody you think you know is Scott Adams. Oh, he's a Dilbert guy. But I actually wasn't that into Dilbert until I read his book, How to Fail at Almost Anything in Life and Still Succeed. And I thought, this guy, he understands mindset, he understands persuasion, he understands the world more than pretty much anybody. And then I found his work writing about Trump, and I realized he sees things that nobody else sees. So I would like to introduce him and let him introduce himself.
Hi, thanks. That was very nice of you.
So it's interesting because, again, people call him the Dilbert guy, and I go, how dare you? You know, which is kind of a good problem to have. How dare you call this comic of 30 years who's been syndicated worldwide and is recognized everywhere as merely just a comic? I mean, that's a good problem to have, but really I don't see you as the Dilbert guy or the cartoonist at all.
You know, in my mind, I've always been an entrepreneur. And so my personal view is I didn't have any walls, just Dilbert was the thing that worked first and best.
Now, what I think you're really good at, and that most people don't understand, is you talk to all these people about Trump and persuasion. And let's just take a fundamental question that nobody asked you, is what is persuasion? What does it mean to you?
Persuasion is, for me, it's the entire universe that goes from advertising to, marketing to hypnosis, all the way to brainwashing at the far end. And it's all the tools that are a little bit common, but it's the full set of tools.
Including, for example, if you want to look right now, either he is doing it or I'm doing it. There's unconscious mirroring going on now with body language. Maybe you want to tell them about that?
Yeah, so one of the techniques in hypnosis is that you want to pace people or match what they're doing. And it doesn't matter what you're matching. It could be their position, it could be their breathing, it could be the types of words that they typically use, that you would copy them. But once you copy somebody long enough, they start feeling comfortable with you and they start thinking that the things you say make more sense than they used to. Because, hey, it's like it's almost coming out of my body. This person and I are on the same wavelength.
Which is what people call building rapport. We often hear, which is why I love what you do, is we all hear these things, oh, you got to build rapport with people. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go build rapport with people. What does that even mean? Well, if you're mirroring a person, you're mirroring their body language, mirroring the way they talk. Now you're building rapport because they think, oh, I'm looking across from somebody just like me.
Yeah, and it's slightly different than trying to make them like you. All right, so that would be, a whole different set of tools, which is useful too. I mean, people will be more persuaded if they like you, but that would be slightly different than the pacing and leading and the mirroring. And
you learned all this, studying hypnosis?
So I studied hypnosis when I was in my 20s, and that gave me interest in the field enough that it's been a lifetime of observation and study and practice.
And when you studied hypnosis, do you see Trump doing these same things?
I see in Trump the best skill level I've ever seen as a persuader. But not only does he have the techniques of a good marketer, a good salesperson, but he has the whole Trump persona, and that's powerful. And then he has the ability to say almost anything without shame and without fear of consequence, apparently. So those are very powerful tools. And his consistency and his unwillingness to apologize, for example. Most people see that as a flaw. But in the world of persuasion, you eventually convince people that there's no point in asking you to change because you don't apologize and you don't change. So to the extent that he can create that sense in other people's minds, it's a great negotiating advantage.
Well, there even have been some studies where you have a confidence bias. So you'll take a guy come in and you'll say, how long is this line? And he'll say, oh, here's how long it is. He'll measure it. And then there's two other people at the table who are there to rig the experiment. And they'll say, no, that's not how long it is. You can give a person a ruler, and they'll start to doubt themselves. And I think that's when people think, well, you're wrong. If you don't admit it and you keep going at it, you force the other person to question themselves.
Yeah, there's someone in my life that I won't mention who sometimes will say an untruth with such confidence, and it's a ridiculous truth, that I find myself questioning whether it's real. And you almost find yourself saying, it's not real, but I feel like I have to act like it is. And so it just splits your brain in two. There's a rational one saying, that's not real, and then there's an irrational one saying, well, let's pretend it is. So you get that going.
Well, and that's what Trump does, I think, and what you do and other people do is you bring people into your reality. Steve Jobs did it, right?
Yeah. Jobs was famous for bending reality, and he was probably the best persuader I've ever seen. The best example of that was when, if you remember, there was Antenna Gate. So one of the early iPhones, if you touched it just right, it lost the connection. Now, for most products, if you said just holding it in your hand the wrong way would make it not work, that would just be devastating. But Steve Jobs goes on, I think it was a conference call with journalists, and he said, I'll paraphrase now, but he said something along the lines of, all smartphones have problems. We'd like to make our customers happy. Here's what we're going to do. He kept it really simple, but the first statement was the reality bending field. All the attention was on Apple's problem. And as soon as he said, all smartphones have problems, I checked the next day and all the headlines were about the problems of other smartphones. So he changed the frame, he put it in context, and once you saw it in context, you said, oh, I thought that was a problem, but they all have problems.
Right, which is great. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people watching, they don't really get it. You reframed the issue to where you want to talk about me, and this is what Trump and other people are masterful with. Wait, you're talking about me and what I did wrong. Well, wait a minute, everybody does this.
Right.
And now when you do that, you've changed the frame, and therefore you've changed the focus, which leads to what? Confirmation bias.
Yeah, once you have people believing whatever your narrative is, then they're going to start seeing evidence for it, even if the evidence isn't real, right?
Right, and then they say, oh, he was right all along. Who are we to question him? He was the smart guy after all.
Right. I'm getting people on Twitter tweeting me and saying, hey, look at this article. It's something you predicted, or it's just what you said. They must have copied you. And I'll look at the article, and it doesn't look like anything I've ever said or predicted. But people are starting to see it because I predicted other things correctly.
And people, they kind of impose their own meanings on what you say also.
Yeah, everybody's got their own filter. My basic philosophy of life is that our brains are not designed for reality. All right, our brains evolved just to keep us alive. So you and I could have a completely different experience of reality. You could be believing, a different religion than I am, for example, and we could still have this conversation because it doesn't matter what's in your head. Your vision of reality doesn't come across and affect me that much. So I think everybody's got their own filter on reality, and you can adjust the filter. And you can suddenly just say, I'd rather look at things this way. And if it works, it works.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way where I don't really care why something works anymore. I used to want to find this unified theory of everything, right? What is the theory of everything? And that's why I liked what you call it, the moist robot hypothesis. You want to explain that?
So the moist robot idea is that humans are subject to the laws of physics, and that the things that are going to happen a minute from now are just guaranteed based on the millions of variables in the world. It has to happen. So we're essentially a complicated machine that just has biological components. And when you start seeing the world that way, first of all, it's disconcerting for some people because it eliminates free will and your soul and all those things. But like I say, it's not about reality. You can believe that reality if you like. But as a filter on life, if you just imagine that people are irrational machines that are reacting to stimulation in a way that you can learn to predict, because there's plenty of tests, we have lots of experience, we know if you push this button on people, they react this way, you get a better sense of prediction. All right? So the worst thing you can do for yourself to make yourself crazy and unhappy is to imagine that other people are rational even some of the time. All right, I've dispensed with all that. People are irrational all the time, but sometimes it makes sense to you, but that's largely a coincidence.
Yeah, one of the best things I did for my own happiness level was when I realized if I'm close, if I'm really on point, maybe 10% of what I do in my life is within my control. It's probably more like 1%, and I found out that I became much happier because I realized that sometimes you hit the right odds, sometimes you don't. And that's why I liked your book and what is different about your book than everyone else's. I'm tired of books saying, if you want to succeed, you need passion and purpose and vision. Where you say, there are rules governing the world, you want to play the odds, but luck ultimately is going to be a large determinant.
Yeah, so in a way I took the same science, if you can call it that, for investing and just moved it into your personal life. All right. An expert at investing would tell you, don't pick this one stock and put all your money in it. That would be like having a goal. And this is the one thing that I'm investing in. They tell you to diversify. Have lots of stocks. One of them works, one of them doesn't, and you're okay on average. But I would say do that with your skill level as well. So as you're compiling different skills, the more you have, the better. And you don't know exactly where that's going. You don't know which of those skills will be important, or which combination of skills, which is even more important, will be the ones that make the difference.
Right. When you call that the talent stack, which I kind of learned on my own, which is, I'm a pretty good writer. Well, I ought to learn a little web design. Okay, I better learn social media. I better learn a little persuasion. And then suddenly what you realize is that all of these skills build on each other. And then that's why you do this, Trump does this, I do this a little bit too. We don't have to plan as much, because when you have that foundation of skills,
stuff comes to you.
Yeah, and life is going to throw stuff at you anyway. So much stuff is out of our control anyway, that you're more prepared for that to happen. So what would you tell people, especially younger people or maybe people starting over, some essential skills that they need?
Well, I think everybody has to build their own skill stack. There are some things I think everybody ought to do. They ought to learn how to speak and communicate. They should learn how to make conversation with strangers. And these are all learnable things. The Dale Carnegie course is really good at all that stuff. But beyond that, you should learn probably persuasion, because it just goes with everything, right? You should learn at least enough about technology that you can communicate and understand websites and social media and that stuff. And a little bit about business without getting your MBA, a little bit about the law, etc. Mm-hmm. So everybody's individual stack should be different based on their situation, but usually start with one strong skill that's maybe not world class, and then see what you can build around that fits your interests.
So universally, I think we would agree then communication, persuasion, influence, kind of the psychology of persuasion, pretty much everybody needs that, right?
Well, yes, everybody needs that, and I would go further and say you can really tell the people who don't have it, because they're struggling. They're frustrated with not understanding why people have different views than they do, why the logical thing they did didn't work out, why they had this one goal and it didn't work. So the world is a confusing place if you don't see it in terms of persuasion.
So where would people start if they want to learn persuasion?
They could Google the phrase persuasion reading list, and they would see a list that I put together of books, including some of mine. But I would say if you're going to read one book just to get you started, whet your appetite, the book is called Influence by Cialdini, Cialdi. I can't spell it.
I can't pronounce it either.
But just go online and look for a book called Influence.
Yeah, I read that book in college actually kind of defensively to realize I had these other cognitive biases. And then I started to realize, that's how the world manipulates me. And then you can kind of start to think of persuasion as manipulation. But you said something, and I agree with this. There are certain things you won't do because of your personal ethics. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, once you improve your powers of persuasion to a certain level, you feel like you can almost convince anybody of anything if you have enough time. You just need their attention long enough to do it. And clearly there are things you should not be convincing other people to do. Something that's just good for you, for example, and just not good for them. And then things you don't know if it'll be good. I don't want to convince somebody just because I think it might be good. I want to be pretty sure. So unless something is unambiguously good for the world, I would prefer not using my persuasion technique.
Now, do you see people using their persuasion for evil?
Yes, I do. Let me give you a dangerous example, I guess. The biggest tech companies in the world, you can name them off, Apple, Google, whatever. They all have a similar and disturbing business model, which is they need to disturb you and get your attention from the other things that you would rather be doing, perhaps. But they use science of persuasion at a deep level. I mean, they're actually A/B testing. Did this headline get you? Did this one? Did this beep? This app? This beep? Until, in my view, social media, for example, is so refined in terms of a persuasion method that it's manipulative to the point it's addictive, and really addictive, like a chemical.
Dopamine, yeah.
And I can see it in myself. I mean, I'm completely aware of the influence, and I actually sometimes will have to create a second conversation in my head where I'm saying, put it down, who's in control, put this down, move your hand, put it down, put it down. And that's somebody who's aware of the technique, right? Imagine somebody just saying, well, I think I just like social media.
Right.
I mean, I know this isn't coming from me.
Right.
This is coming from Google and Apple, and they're freaking scientists who are so smart, they can make me do anything with my hands. They're making my hands move the way they want. They're making me do this. And once you realize that, you have to pull back. But it's also why, I would put, pretty strong box of ethics around my own motions, because I don't want to turn somebody into a button punching zombie.
Yeah, at Twitter, I used to get that way where you get that high, that first time you get the 1,000 retweets, and you're like, wow. And then I realized, okay, I'm defining my own identity based on social media likes. And that's what I like about your work. So let's talk about that a little bit. So one way to free the addiction is to not define your identity based on these dumb likes. But you kind of have to know, there's a lot to unpack there, right?
But it's also a metric, right? We're in a business where you got to see if the thing you did worked, and how do you see it except look at your social media? I have the same problem you do, which is I look at it way too much. But there's also something about the immediacy. I respond to tweets almost right away that I think helps build an audience too. So there's
that's how I rationalize it. I rationalize it. It's personal branding.
Yeah. All right. If you're watching this is two people who understand rational thought, and they know they're not doing it. But what option do we have, really?
Right.
Like, we have to live in the real world, and we recognize when we're rationalizing, but it doesn't allow you not to do it. You don't have that option.
I'm engaging with my audience on social media because I'm building my personal brand, and that's going to lead to, this, that, and everything else. Yeah. I think the unethical thing I see online that I really don't like is the fear-based marketing. Oh my God, you have this problem, you're going to be broke, now buy my $1,900 how to get rich on the internet scheme, and using sales funnels, and you better act now, within 45 minutes you're going to lose it. I really don't like that kind of marketing.
Nobody likes it, but it works. So.
But I won't do it personally.
So you just say, based on that appeal, I'm going to reject you.
That's a matter of my ethics, because I think that.
But if you need an iPhone. Yeah. Sometimes you just need an iPhone. You got to buy it anyway. I
don't like the idea of conning desperate people and selling people false dreams and false promises. That just doesn't resonate with my own personal values.
Yeah, there's a limit, but on the other hand, we're all marketing something, right? Yeah. So everybody's selling.
But you feel good about what you do, though, right?
I try not to market anything that I don't think is worth having at whatever the price is. And usually it's free in my case.
But you wake up and here's what I notice that's different about you than most people. I've been around the game. Your marketing is on point, but it's invisible. Most people don't see it. Most people who market, they burn out. And I think that's because they don't feel good about what they're selling. Like, I feel great about what I do. I wake up every morning like, yes, this is great. I can't wait. And you look great. You're running the game still. Your energy's high.
So what I like these days, and I think this is more a recent internet phenomenon, is that marketing has kind of morphed into usefulness. In other words, so my form of marketing right now is that I blog. I don't really get paid much except some advertising revenue. It's kind of trivial. But everything I'm blogging about now is persuasion, which is useful. You can take it right off the page, apply it to your life. So that should, by theory, make people have a good feeling about me and be a little bit more open to seeing something else I've produced. So that's marketing that is as ethical as you can get. I'm just doing something for you. Likewise, I'm working on a startup. Our marketing will be that this is useful, and we're really about utility.
Yeah, I like that's the way the marketing is headed towards, that kind of Seth Godin model, which is deliver value to people, don't hustle them, don't rush them through these annoying sales funnels anymore. Plus, you're not going to get the right customers. So back to being, am I ethical or not, is the kind of people you run through sales funnels are idiots anyway. And I happen to like the people who like my stuff. I get to, the people who find me, I don't hustle them, so I tend to like them. So I think liking your customer is good.
See, but you have this weird balance, right? If you think your product's good, and you think people are better off with it, and we sort of all do,
right.
And you have a choice of, do I put the burnt orange button there that says buy it, or
right.
do I do the green one? But I know the burnt orange is 13% better clicks.
Right.
I'm going to put the burnt orange.
Right.
I'm not hurting anybody, am I? But
no.
I'm still sort of manipulating them through the funnel. I don't personally use manipulation as a descriptor of anything. because we're all manipulating everything all the time. It's sort of like air. If you have evil intent, then people are going to say it's manipulating. But most of us don't. Most of us are just trying to make a living, and we think we got a good product, and we think you'd like it if you bought it.
And you mean well. So you said something earlier which you kind of live by, which is be useful. Maybe expand on that for people who want to think about how they should live their own lives.
Yeah, I think this comes from my upbringing. My mother worked on, she grew up in a farm, and I worked on the farm a lot. And everything's about eliminating wasted anything, right? Everything's useful. You got to use every bit of your energy in a productive way. So that just becomes part of you after a while. And I don't know if it's just me, I don't know if it's men in general, I don't know if it's people in general, but I feel biologically most in tune with my nature when I'm useful. And I could make an argument that men have evolved as sort of a, I hate to say this, but a service class for in the service of reproduction. All right, so we're not the main actor. We're the server bringing the food. And whether you're actively doing something for reproduction or actively helping people in the world, which indirectly helps, it feels meaningful in a way that other things don't.
So would you say now meaning more than money drives you?
Well, I can say that now because I have enough money. So
Right.
yes, I wake up every day, and I'm usually working anywhere from 4 in the morning and 5 in the morning. Usually I start. I work on weekends most of the time, and every penny I'll make for the rest of my life will be spent by someone else because I have enough for me. Like I couldn't spend it probably if I tried. It would bore me trying to do it. But I can't imagine not working at any age until I'm unable, because the amount that I can produce in economic value is, as much as a village. So how do I let the village starve so I could sleep in that day?
Right.
Like how does that feel right? So to the extent that I have the ability to make a larger impact on the world, that's hugely motivating.
Right, which links us back to manipulation and the idea that I think men are manipulated too much by duty, where you're taught to act against your own self-interest out of this hardwired sense of duty we have, which makes men in a lot of cases disposable. Oh, go fight this dumb war because it's the right thing.
Yeah, here's my twist on that. I promote, in my book you mentioned, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, that you pursue selfishness for the benefit of others. All right? If you don't take care of yourself, somebody's going to have to take care of your ass, and you're not doing anybody any good by that. So I say, go get your education, go get your money, take care of yourself. When you're stable, there's a natural thing that happens, and I believe it probably happens to almost everybody, that when your own needs are taken care of, your attention starts spreading out. It's like, okay, now how about a family? Yeah, that's looking good. Family's looking good. What's happening in my town? And if you're lucky enough to have like a big audience or a big reach, you just start thinking globally, because you think, well, if I could do something that would be a little bit good for 6 billion people, well, that's way better than 5 people. So I think some of that just happens. You look at Bill Gates, right? Started as the most capitalist person in the world, but fairly early on, I think he always planned this. He knew that this would just reverse, and he would be 100% externally focused when he got everything he needed. And aren't you glad he did? I mean, he'll do things in Africa that you couldn't have done if he hadn't been super selfish in the beginning. Yeah,
I've sort of gotten that way where I lived a very sort of self-indulgent life of hedonism and every kind of debauchery people could imagine. And now I wake up as I'm like the most boring guy. I have this reputation on the internet. Like, man, if you saw how I live my life.
The ordinary day.
Yeah, you wake up, you work. I'm not going out doing things that people would consider whatever, hedonistic. I'm just trying to help people every day of my life. And that certainly has changed. I think the issue, though, is a lot of young people, especially young men, aren't taught you got to kind of take care of yourself first. You got to do yourself first. And that's kind of the manipulation I see. You hear people say, for example, man up, but there's no sort of, I don't want to get you into whole gender controversy, but you hear people a lot of times say, man up, man up, man up, and we don't hear enough people saying, hey, why don't you figure your own life out first before you have to man up and take care of the family and the tribe and everyone else.
I go so far as to say it's possible that marriage is the biggest problem in the world, but it's invisible because we're all sort of primed to like it. And historically, it had its purposes, and people understand that. But at the moment, if you start looking at all the problems it may have caused, I mean, just potentially, if you look at the fact in the Middle East that the important person is going to have several wives, which leaves no mating opportunity for lots of men.
Right.
What are they going to do to find meaning? Well, maybe blowing something up gives them meaning. It's very unpopular to say because we imagine it's about they used their reason and they looked at politics and they found some reasons, or even religion. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's just basic biology. You take a bunch of angry young men, take away their mating options, give them guns in hot weather, shit's going to go down.
Right.
All right. It doesn't matter who you are, what your fucking religion is, shit's going to blow up.
Right.
If you look at the economic well-being of people in the United States, half of marriages end in divorce. There's kids involved. Everybody's fucked up for a while. We're pretty good at getting over that stuff.
Right.
But it didn't have to happen in the first place if we had some better systems. And we're not close to having any kind of better systems. But it ought to be something we're thinking about, because nobody can ruin a kid faster than a parent.